Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we are strapping in for a pretty serious scholarly look at contemporary Indian cinema. We're stepping far beyond, the latest blockbusters and star gossip.
Right.
We want to analyze the profound academic critiques of what research is calling the new frames of film, this massive shift fueled by technology, ideology,
Right.
the works.
That's exactly right. And our sources today are quite dense. We're looking at 4 scholarly essays and an editorial from Review Science and Video.
Okay.
And they're all focused on extracting the political and cultural shifts really defining the industry now. So our mission for you, the listener, is to help you quickly digest the core argument.
Arguments about what exactly?
Everything from, say, the rise of digital tools making filmmaking cheaper, all the way to the deepest semiotic critiques, like why a simple misdelivered lunchbox or a street-side kulfi can carry so much political weight.
So we're making some heavy film theory accessible.
That's the plan.
Good. Because we're moving beyond just what the films are about and asking how they're made and maybe more importantly, what they secretly mean, according to these scholars.
Exactly. This is intellectual heavy lifting, really, but it's driven by some fascinating case studies.
Okay, let's dive in. Where do we start? That huge revolutionary force, the digital shift.
Yeah, let's unpack this technological discontinuity first, because the sources stress it's deeply political and economic.
Okay.
They highlight that the move from analog film to digital, and we're talking affordable smartphones, widespread internet, even emerging AI tools now,
All right.
has fundamentally democratized filmmaking in India.
And democratization isn't just a buzzword here, is it? It has a real material impact.
Definitely. The sources actually mention that this shift, especially with AI and post-production, has cut production costs significantly.
How significant?
Almost 30%. Think about that.
Wow, nearly a third.
Yeah. That massive drop in the barrier to entry means that production, which used to be the domain of big studios, established families.
The old guard.
Precisely. It's now accessible to almost anyone with, a decent smartphone and some skill.
So that instantly creates new networks, right? Decentralized ones.
Exactly. We see the rise of communities like Talking Films Online, TFO. It operates on what scholars are calling a rhizomatic model.
Rhizomatic.
Yeah.
Okay, that sounds like Deleuze, right? High theory stuff.
It is, yeah.
Practically speaking, what does that mean for a filmmaker, say, in Mumbai or Chennai?
It means it's horizontal, not top-down. Decentralized, interconnected. Think of like a root system spreading out, not a single big tree trunk.
Okay, got it.
So it bypasses the traditional gatekeepers, the studio bosses, the censorship boards, even the established film festivals to some extent.
And this ecosystem, it's helped by the OTT platforms, Netflix, Prime Video.
Absolutely. They play a huge role. They often have more lenient censorship, diverse ways to monetize content. It allows truly innovative, sometimes niche stuff to thrive outside the commercial pressure cooker of mainstream Bollywood.
And bypassing those old power structures, that makes the shift inherently political, doesn't it?
Deeply political. The sources really stress that this technological access is empowering, particularly for young filmmakers, marginalized voices.
Which is where we start seeing more women behind the camera.
Yeah.
Other underrepresented groups.
Exactly. It's driving change that the legacy media system was historically, pretty resistant to.
So this capacity for critical engagement, tackling tough issues like gender inequality, caste, abuse, corruption,
Yeah.
it's amplified.
It is, yeah. Because the digital revolution provides a platform, a space for free expression that might otherwise just get crushed by the centralized older structures.
Right. Okay, speaking of gender, let's pivot there, because that's a huge part of the critique, isn't it? The patriarchy within the industry itself. That traditional idea of cinematic authority has always seemed centered on the auteur, the singular, usually male genius.
And that concept, which got really popularized in the West by critics like Sarris, focusing on, Godard, Truffaut.
Those are French New Wave guys.
Yeah.
Right. That's what the new scholarship is actively trying to dismantle, or at least question, when applied to the Indian context.
Why dismantle it?
Because it's a framework, the sources argue, that has historically marginalized pioneering women filmmakers. People like Fatma Begum or Vijaya Nirmala, often just erasing them from the main cinematic story.
So the new focus is more on collective work, or acknowledging how patriarchy tries to contain female directors.
Both, really. And acknowledging that anxiety around female authorship. This brings us to a really compelling case study the sources analyze, the 2021 Malayalam film, Sarah's.
Ah, Sarah's. I remember that one. It centers on Sarah, a female director, right? And she's trying to balance her dream job
Directing a crime thriller typically seen as a masculine genre.
against the societal pressure, the expectation of motherhood after she gets married.
Exactly. And the film's story feels chillingly grounded in reality. It reflects structural issues, even explicit sexual harassment that were documented in the 2024 Justice HEMA Committee report in Kerala.
So real-world parallels, how does that play out in the film?
Well, when Sarah tries to get funding for her film, she faces these awful choices. Propositions for sexual compliance on one hand, or just outright dismissal because she's a woman. She's told she can't handle a masculine genre.
Oof. But the sources note the film's actual political message or outcome is kind of complex, don't they?
They do. It's ambiguous. While Sarah's definitely celebrates her personal choice, she seeks an abortion to pursue her career. Her husband supports shared domestic duties.
Which sounds progressive.
It does, but the academic critique suggests the film ultimately frames her decision to defer motherhood as just that, a temporary delay.
Ah, so not a rejection of the expectation, just a postponement.
Kind of. It's seen as a negotiation within the existing patriarchal framework, not a radical break from it.
Okay.
Critics argue this reflects a sort of post-feminist media culture. It grants the urban, usually upper-class woman the choice to delay motherhood.
Making the story palatable for multiplex audiences.
Exactly. But it stops short of addressing the underlying structural reasons why that choice is even necessary, or the issues faced by women with, less privilege.
So that's the mainstream approach.
Yeah.
Negotiating within the boundaries. What about the counterpoint?
Yeah.
You mentioned those student films from the TFO competition.
Right. They used their new digital access to make some genuinely radical statements.
Tell me about those.
Well, these are projects made with, basic digital tools like APA, which confronts family violence head-on, or Nori Nehi tackling gender abuse, and Bala, which explores the transgender experience.
And these show real political depth.
Absolutely deep political intelligence. And what's amazing, the sources note, is their technical skill. They're achieving advanced fluid camera movements using cheap gimbals and just smartphones.
Wow.
It really proves that artistic vision and political depth don't necessarily require millions of dollars. They require access, and that's what the digital shift is providing.
Okay, so this move towards broader cultural inclusivity, more voices. It sounds like a clear win for representation, doesn't it?
You'd think so. But this is where the academic critique gets, let's say, really sharp, and maybe controversial for some.
How so?
We have to introduce this concept of woke capitalism.
Woke capitalism. Okay, break that down.
This comes mainly from Sharad Raj's analysis, drawing on some heavy hitters like Zizek, Adorno. And the central thesis is pretty pointed. It argues that woke capitalism uses politically progressive messaging things like including marginalized groups in films.
Right, representation.
It uses that as a substitute for genuine political and economic reform.
Wait. A substitute? How?
By reducing real, complex social justice issues into easily consumed, commodified content. Content designed primarily to boost streaming subscriptions or market share, not to actually challenge the system.
That sounds incredibly cynical. How do the sources justify that claim? That making films about marginalized groups could actually be anti-progressive in some way?
Well, they argue the issue isn't the fact of representation itself, but the manner of representation, how it's packaged for market viability.
Okay, give me an example.
Take the critique of Jund, the 2022 film about a Dalit community.
Right, starring Amitabh Bachchan?
Exactly. The sources claim that despite its subject matter, the film falls back on what they call Savarna tropes.
Savarna tropes. Could you quickly explain Savarna for listeners who might not know?
Sure. Savarna generally refers to the upper caste segments within the Hindu caste hierarchy. So a Savarna trope in this film, according to the critique,
Yes.
would be portraying the slum inhabitants primarily as victims, people who fundamentally need an upper caste messiah figure played by the star Bachchan to come in, guide them, and essentially save them.
The savior narrative.
Right. The argument is that the film, aiming for broad market success, deliberately disconnects the story from its authentic Ambedkarite political and historical context. It turns a real struggle for social justice into a more digestible, consumable hero story.
So it's about assimilation then, making the radical palatable for mainstream consumption.
That's the core of the critique, yeah. And we see similar, pretty harsh critiques applied to LGBTQ representation in some mainstream films.
Like which ones?
Well, Badhai Do, from 2022, it's about a gay man and a lesbian woman in a marriage of convenience.
Lavender marriage, right.
Yes. It's critiqued in the sources as being overly sentimental, maybe lacking genuine, gritty, experiential insight into the realities of that situation.
And the argument is that this...
The argument is that the LGBTQ characters are positioned almost like novelty items. The sources use the phrase supermarket approach, where diverse identities are kind of displayed on a shelf simply to maximize consumer choice.
Rather than actually challenging the viewer's comfort zone or preconceived notions?
Exactly. It's representation as product variety.
Wow. Okay. And even films with feminist themes aren't immune to this critique.
Not at all. The sources are quite critical, for instance, of La Pata Ladies, the 2023 film.
Really? People seem to enjoy that one. What's the critique?
They call it pop feminism and a frothy presentation. And, we need to stress again, these are the specific strong claims from the academic sources we're discussing.
Understood. Reporting the critique.
Right. The academic argument is that a film like that, while perhaps enjoyable and well-intentioned, is ultimately designed for urban multiplex audiences.
And the problem with that is
that it arguably lacks the deep, nuanced research into the interiority, the lived realities, the specific struggles of rural women's lives that would be required for truly meaningful political art. It stays surface level.
Okay. And this critique goes even deeper, doesn't it? Beyond just the content who is being shown and into the actual form of the film, referencing Adorno.
Yes, this is a crucial distinction they make. The argument, drawing on Adorno's aesthetics, is that simply featuring a marginalized person or ticking a social issue box, they call content aesthetics, can actually annihilate formal aesthetics.
Formal aesthetics meaning how the film is actually made, the style.
Exactly. The way it's shot, the editing, the mise en scène, the use of sound, maybe even things like slow cinema. These formal elements are essential, the argument goes, because they can challenge the viewer's comfortable passive consumption habits. Well, when a film focuses only on delivering easily digestible, important content, sacrificing challenging form for easy consumption, the sources argue it ultimately depoliticizes the message. It provides a kind of bourgeois comfort, maybe even freedom from the guilt of ignoring the unrepresented, without actually demanding any real change in perspective from the viewer.
That's a heavy critique. Okay, let's shift gears completely now. We've done technology, gender, woke capitalism. Let's move from that intense political critique to something seemingly simpler, but maybe just as deep. Semiotics.
Ah, the study of signs and symbols.
Right. Specifically, how the sources analyze the meaning embedded in the most ordinary objects, like food in the films of Ritesh Batra.
Yes, this is fascinating. The sources apply semiotic theory drawing on thinkers like Eagleton, Barthes, to argue that in Batra's cinema, food is never just food.
It's always meaning something else.
Always. It functions as this complex signifier. It can represent a gift or a threat, solidarity, connection, even suffocation, all packed into a simple meal or even just the container it comes in.
It makes you realize the level of scholarly attention being paid to every single paratha or daba shown on screen.
Absolutely. And the sources brilliantly contrast Batra's two major films, The Lunchbox and Photograph, based on how they deploy food semiotically.
How do they differ?
Well, The Lunchbox is seen as portraying a journey from food to love.
Okay.
The misdelivered lunchbox, the one marked 11F2, literally drives the plot, right? But its contents also reflect social hierarchy. Isla's carefully home-cooked food versus the generic, almost indifferent food from the office canteen.
And Fabienne's character arc.
His transformation is tracked through his relationship with the food. He goes from being this indifferent, lonely, solitary eater to someone who eagerly anticipates the aroma, using the food almost as a substitute for the intimacy he's lost or never had.
Food is connection. Okay.
Yeah.
And the photograph reverses that.
Exactly. Photograph depicts a journey from love to food. Or perhaps from love to the idea of providing food or sustenance.
How does that work?
Rafi's deepening, albeit complicated, relationship with Maloney inspires him to dream bigger. Economically, he starts planning to build a Campa-Cola factory.
Campa-Cola, the old Indian soft drink Maloney was nostalgic for.
Right. It's his attempt to elevate his social standing, to bridge the gap between them. And the key metaphor the analysis points to is kulfi versus softy ice cream.
Kulfi versus softy. Explain that.
Rafi initially sees himself as a kulfi-type person, hard, pragmatic, stuck in his ways, unwilling to risk change for sentiment.
Okay, the traditional, dense, hard Indian ice cream.
Right. His metaphorical transformation into someone more sentimental, more willing to take a risk for Melonia Softy, is signaled when the street vendor he knows decides to switch his business from selling hard kulfi to the softer, more modern softy ice cream.
Ah, so the food choice reflects his internal shift. That's clever.
It is, and the sources also highlight how specific food items or eating habits act as really subtle markers of class and gender roles.
Like what?
Well, consider Maloney in photograph. She's from a higher social class, right? Her willingness, even eagerness to indulge in street food, specifically that brightly colored ice candy with Rafi's grandmother,
Yeah.
it becomes this powerful visual symbol of her attempt to bridge that class divide, to connect across social barriers.
And doesn't the film kind of validate that?
It does. When she gets sick later, the doctor dismisses concerns, saying that regular consumption of street food actually builds immunity. So the ice candy isn't just candy. It's a metaphor for class distinction, assimilation, who can digest different social circumstances.
Fascinating. And on the gender front,
Yeah.
there was a detail in the lunchbox.
Yes, a small but incredibly powerful detail about Isla's mother. After her husband dies, she develops this sudden, intense craving for parathas.
Some paralysis for breakfast.
Yeah, and the reading is that this signifies liberation. She had spent decades dutifully preparing food for her husband, often neglecting her own needs, skipping her own meals. So her sudden, almost urgent craving for this simple comfort food after he's gone reflects her profound sense of relief, her release from a suffocating, dutiful marriage. Food, in this interpretation, is intrinsically tied to her newfound agency, her freedom from patriarchal expectation.
Wow. Okay, this has been a genuinely comprehensive deep dive. We've covered technology, high theory, sharp political critiques, and even culinary semiotics.
We've covered a lot of ground.
So pulling it all together, what's the final takeaway for understanding the contemporary landscape of Indian cinema based on these academic views?
I think the synthesis points towards something like convergence culture. That's the term that seems to fit. It's where everyday life, food, reproduction, gender dynamics constantly collides with big political structures, patriarchy, democracy, capitalism.
And all of it is amplified and reshaped by these new digital possibilities we started with.
Exactly. So the overall landscape described is incredibly pluralistic. It's spanned simultaneously by this really sharp critical academic analysis on one end and the overwhelming pressures of commercial mainstreaming and market forces on the other.
So for you, the listener, understanding modern Indian cinema
Ah.
really requires looking beyond just the surface plot. You need to grapple with these academic frameworks, semiotics, the critique of the auteur, those postmodern critiques of woke capitalism, to really reveal the core politics embedded within the art form itself.
And ultimately, the sources seem to suggest that the real fight for genuine inclusivity, for freedom, maybe has to happen not just in the content, who gets represented on screen,
What, where?
but in the form itself, how the story is told, how the film is constructed aesthetically.
Okay, so that leaves us with a final thought, a challenge maybe.
I think so. The question these analyses leave us with is this. If digital tools have indeed made filmmaking cheaper, more accessible, how can the new generation of filmmakers avoid just being assimilated by those dominant market forces? How can they actually use formal aesthetics, challenging narrative structures, maybe disruptive editing, a different kind of visual language?
To deliver a genuinely radical political message, not just one that feels good, but one that actually challenges.
Exactly. What new cinematic form will emerge that can truly challenge the speed, the consumption model, the very logic of the OTT era? Think about how filmmakers like Godard or Varda used form politically in their time. What's the equivalent now?
That's the big question. What will that new form look like?
That's what we need to be watching for in the coming years.
A perfect challenge to leave hanging in the air. And that's our deep dive for today. We'll see you next time.